St. Paul, The Fan.
The Power Hour is live. KFAN.com/watch is where you can watch the Power Trip weekdays at 8 a.m. All brought to you by Quantum Fiber.
Thanks, Echo. Welcome to the Power Trip Morning Show, everybody. The 8 o'clock hour. It's 8:03 right now. We've got some huge guests on in the main studio over there. Not just Ben Lieber.
Oh, stop.
Oh, stop it. But Fran Zeuli is back in. Hey, buddy, how are you, man? It's good to see your face again.
Hey, it's great to be on.
Sorry you didn't get to come over and say hi yet.
It's all right. That's all right. It's good to be here.
Yeah. And you brought another good friend, a future friend of the show, now a permanent friend of the show, whether he knows it or not yet. I guess he probably hadn't made a judgment yet. But Jon Berg, movie producer. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hey, guys. How you doing? Good morning.
We're really happy to have you in here.
Happy to be here.
I think we're going to just start at the very, very top here as before we even get into what you've got going on, what you've done in the past. Could you tell us, please, what a movie producer's job actually is?
That's a tough one. It's basically to hear no probably about 1 million times before you find the yes and somebody actually puts the money up to make your movie. It's a person with a script and you're the last person making sure that script gets the screen. So you're with the movie the whole way. You're the advocate for the movie.
Wow, feet on the ground from the very beginning. That's fascinating because, and again, I won't dominate the conversation, but this ties right into, obviously you did Out of Time and Elf, both in the year 2003.
Yeah.
Elf, when you did somebody bring you that script? Did you find that script? How do you come in contact with that movie, which ends up being possibly one of the top 5, maybe top 3 greatest Christmas films of all time?
That's a good one and a lucky one. It does smell a little bit like beef and cheese in here. I will be honest.
Yeah.
Little elf line. That one was a lucky one. I got my hands on that script in 2001. I think I read it. I loved it. I love Christmas movies. I thought it had a great premise to it. I thought it would connect with people. It was super funny. And I met with the writer and who's still a good friend, David Berenbaum. And we sat down and I hadn't made a movie yet. I mean, this is another thing that a producer has to do, which maybe happens in here sometimes too, where you have to bluff a little bit. It's a little bit of a poker hand. So
go on.
Yeah. So I had a script and I was meeting with the writer and I said, hey, this is awesome. Who do you imagine as playing Buddy the Elf? And we went back and forth on some names. And I said, the person that I see in this movie, and I think would kill it, is Will Ferrell.
Wow.
And he went, oh my God, that's an incredible idea. And then he said, can you get him? And I looked him straight in the eye and I said, yes.
Perfect.
Yeah, but I had other than playing basketball with his like junior agent, I really didn't know how to get to him, but we ended up getting it to him, and he liked it.
So you said David Berenbaum was the one who wrote the script, correct? So does he find you and give you the script? How do you find the script? Because then I guess my question is if this is your first movie that you're producing, how does anybody like Favreau or Farrell or James Caan, how do they trust you for a second, let alone the writer?
Right. Yeah, it's a good question. Maybe they shouldn't have.
You have to bluff almost all of them,
Yeah,
too?
I had to look Jimmy Caan. You don't want to bluff with Jimmy Caan. He's pretty pretty tough. Well, at that point, I had been working in the movie business for, 6-7 years. So I think I went to University of Wisconsin and then graduated from Wisconsin and then went out to LA right away. And, you start to meet people and you develop a reputation and, there's a whole business behind the business. There are managers that represent writers, managers that represent actors, agents that represent writers, agents that represent actors, agents that represent authors. And you just kind of plant yourself out in LA and you start meeting some folks. And so David, I met because I was working at Universal. I was a studio executive before I was a producer, and I was working there for 2 years. And I had some success over there. And I knew his cousin, who was a writer-director who we were making a movie with. And he said, hey, these are actually the words you don't want to hear. He said, hey, I have a cousin who's really talented. No one knows who he is, and no one cares. But you should read a script of his.
But you did.
I did,
Just because you trusted him.
Yeah, I mean, and that's ultimately my job. I mean, I was at Warner Brothers for 10 years and had the good fortune to make a lot of movies over there. My job is ultimately, as a producer or a studio executive, is to sit in a room, open my ears, read scripts, read books, read articles. When people come in and pitch me movie ideas, I'm the open mic, and then you pick the ones that you have passion for and you want to pursue.
I'm sure you got a question, Ben, but real quick, let me go back even further if you don't mind, John. Are you from here? How do you even get involved in film at all? How do you decide you're going to go do that?
Yeah, I'm having a life review here. It's like 6 o'clock in the morning for me, or whatever time it is. So, I always loved movies. I mean, I've listened to your show a little bit. I know you guys love movies, and you love, quoting movie lines back and forth to one another, and you have great knowledge of movies and TV. I think you were talking about Night Court yesterday or something like that.
That's right.
Yeah. Which I like too, which I think no young person knows what that is at all.
No.
But that was a good show. I just love movies, and I went to Wisconsin. When I went to Wisconsin, there was really no film department. I mean, it was, there was like one room with like a video camera. But there was no film department. But I was always a movie fan, and I had a friend growing up outside of Boston. I grew up in Lexington, Massachusetts, and I had a friend who was a year older than me and had done the move. He had gone out to Hollywood. He was working for a producer. He was working for a very prolific producer, somebody who's since out of the business or doesn't produce anymore. But and I said to him, "What do you do out there, and how does it work?" And he kind of gave me the ropes. And he made it seem possible, and then I went out and stayed on his couch and did that thing. I couch surfed for a while and landed in the business. And my first job was, I was a messenger. I was a temporary holiday messenger.
Wow.
Delivering,
Packages to clients of an agency.
Okay, I want to fast forward real quick to go back to just the role of a producer. It's fascinating when you're talking about reading the script for Elf, because I think for a lot of us, you can't see anybody but Will Ferrell. So when you're reading the actual paper script, so when you read these scripts and they're just given to you sort of cold, and they're like, okay, here's the title, here's the script. You're reading just the words. You don't know the characters that are playing these, and I think that's super fascinating. Is that how it always works? Like you get the script and you're like, I don't even know how to picture this character, or do you just figure it out as you go along? Okay, these 10 actors are actors, female, male, and female. These would be perfect parts for them. Like, how does that work in your brain to put it all together?
Yeah, it's a little bit, as with everything, it's a complex answer to that. I mean, in the case of Buddy the Elf, there was nobody attached to the script. So when I got the script, it was free and clear, which means I could option it. I could, try to put it together with the writer's permission. But there was nobody attached. So he had originally written the script for Jim Carrey. That was who he was thinking of in his head. And he had written it a few years earlier. And this is the other thing about Elf, which is it's just the most impossible thing. I still can't believe it's Christmas Miracle, Little Christmas Baby. It had gone out, what's called going out, to buyers, to studios and buyers, like 3 times. He had written it in 96. When I got my hands on it, it was 2000, I guess, 2001. And so it had already been seen by a bunch of people. They had tried to attach actors. And when I sat down with him, he's an awesome dude. And I said, I really like Jim Carrey. The Mask is, one of my favorite movies, and Ace Ventura and all those. I was like, but I just don't see him as Buddy the Elf. He has an edge to him. And I think the guy who you want to play Buddy has to have an innocence and be super funny. And Will was that guy coming off of SNL. When we finally got him attached, and I've told this story so many times, we had him attached to the script. We then went to the studios with him. We didn't have a director, with the screenplay. And we said, he wants to make the movie. We're going to find a director together. We got passed on by everybody, by the entire town. I mean, 2 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, Mike White, who's the creator of White Lotus, stood up at the Golden Globes after he won his Golden Globe for White Lotus, and he pointed to everyone in the crowd, sort of famously, and he was like, you all passed on this. All of you. I brought this show to you. You all passed, and here we are. It happens. You bring it out to the town. That's why I say one of the producer's jobs is to hear no a million times. And you're looking for that yes. So we got some interest from New Line. And then the way that the deal works, we had to then, when New Line made an offer, we had to go back out to everybody again because they had there was a deal contingency. And we got passed on again. And not only did I get passed on, I had one person say to me who was at a studio, he said to me, listen, bro, I just want you to know something. this is going to be your first movie, and not only is this movie going to be a stinker, like Will Ferrell can't lead a movie. Why would you think he could? But also, this is going to end your career. You're going to be one and done on this one. So you really have to have confidence in, your point of view. And it's so hard to get movies made. You're going to hear no a billion times.
Our guest again is a movie producer, Jon Berg, and he's done Elf, as we're talking about, Out of Time, Edge of Tomorrow, Wonder Woman, Justice League, Aquaman, Dr. Sleep, on and on and on. And we'll talk a lot about all those films. But just looking back, and as we're continuing to talk about Elf, and I'm sure that movie means the world to you. I mean, that's the start of you. That's a major thing for your career. Before Elf, though, looking at Will Ferrell's career, you mentioned Saturday Night Live. He'd been a bit player in Zoolander and
Austin Powers,
things
Austin
like that.
Powers,
But to your point, and to what the gentleman said, he hadn't carried a movie yet. What made you think he could?
Well, it's funny. I just first of all, he was on SNL, I think, for 7 years, and he was the funniest guy on that show. I mean, he was the lead of that show. You couldn't take your eyes off him. More cowbell, the cheerleaders. Sure. I mean, on and on. And he had all of his comedy. He'd also been in Roxbury Guys, which nobody remembers.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so there wasn't great evidence that this guy was a leading man and he could be in a movie where there's a little bit of a romance and all that. But I just look, Big is one of my favorite movies. Mm-hmm. Tootsie, these were sort of the references that we had. And he had that perfect mix of super funny, but it didn't come with an edge. And it just felt, to me, it felt right. And then I'll just tell you funny stories. So we get through all the hoops. We're financed. We're making the movie. We've got Jimmy Caan. Jimmy Caan wasn't the first choice for the Walter role. I'm so glad we wound up with Jimmy Caan. Zooey Deschanel wasn't the first choice for the Jovi role. The studio wanted somebody else. Wow. So, you find your cast. And Favreau, we were so lucky to get Favreau. I mean, look at his career now. I mean, he's the man, and he did such a great job on the movie. We are in Vancouver. We shot for 2 weeks right around Christmas, the first 2 weeks of the movie. Then we broke for Christmas and New Year's, and then we went to Vancouver to finish the movie. So we're prepping the movie in Vancouver. And I've met Will Ferrell. I've hung out with Will Ferrell. I've watched him on SNL for 7 years, but I haven't really spent a lot of time with Will Ferrell. And here's the thing about Will Ferrell, is the funniest man ever, is he doesn't need to be on all the time. He's not a typical comedian. So if he was hanging out here, he'd be hilarious. But if you're away from microphones and cameras, he's just a normal dude. And he doesn't put it on. He doesn't turn it on. So I was hanging out with him for a couple of weeks, and I called a buddy, and I said, I got to tell you something. Like, I've been hanging out with this guy for 3 weeks, and he hasn't made me laugh once. I think I may be in trouble. And they're like, come on, you just turn on, look at some clips of SNL. I was like, okay. And then, he puts on the costume, and he's unbelievable.
But just to go back, because I don't want to skate over it. And so not only are you kind of risking a one and done, right? You're gambling that this is going to work.
Yeah.
You just mentioned Zooey Deschanel is a person that wasn't established at that point, right? Will Ferrell had not established himself as a lead film actor yet.
Peter Dinklage hadn't. Yeah.
Peter Dinklage.
We can look back now and go, well, Favreau's a no-brainer, but he also was an unproven commodity at that point. So it looks like a no-brainer in hindsight, but you're the only one that you have that's established is James Caan, right?
Yes.
Otherwise, everybody else
the great James Caan
is a flyer.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Yeah, and it worked. Sometimes it's good to make a movie when you're just under the radar, and we also were at a time at New Line. I mean, not to get so into the weeds here, but the head of New Line, this guy who's running it, sort of famous kind of wonderkind over there, or in Ted Lasso speak, wonder kid. He got fired right as we were going into production. So we were really kind of out there, and we had two great executives who were super positive on the movie, Kent Alterman and Cale Boyder, and but we were just making this movie. And Favreau has like an indie sensibility. I mean, that's part of what his magic is that he's got a commercial disposition and mind, but he also has an indie kind of attitude.
Swingers and Made.
Yes, it was Swingers and Made, and he had done a bunch of. He came up through the indie film world. He actually was in Chicago, and he was doing Second City out there.
How much inspiration did you take from Home Alone? It's kind of similar, where you got a kid who is the lead, and nobody thought that was kind of the same story with that movie and that Netflix thing, the movies that made us, where they're like, no one's going to buy a movie that is led by a kid. And you guys kind of had a similar thing with Farrell, where he'd never led a film. How much inspiration did you take from that?
Yeah, I mean, I just believed in Will, and then you see him in the costume, and you buy it. But Home Alone's a great example because one of my favorite filmmakers who I think doesn't get the credit he deserves is John Hughes. So you've got Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and you've got
he's so good.
right, and you've got 16 Candles, and he wrote
Buck.
The Breakfast Club, and Uncle Buck, one of my favorite movies of all time. Uncle Buck is a good also proxy for Elf in some ways. I think. I mean, it's more big because there's magic involved, but I mean, Uncle Buck is the greatest. So.
There's a childhood innocence that permeates Elf and a lot of those films that you gravitate towards.
Yeah, and that's John Hughes. I mean, John Hughes was such a good writer, but he also he lacked, there was an edge. I mean, so many at that time, because Will did Anchorman right afterwards, and he had been in Old School. Old School came out. That was a big sort of wind in our sails because Old School came out before Elf came out, and it was a huge hit, and he was a big part of Old School. But he couldn't get Anchorman made. I mean, it was between Elf and Anchorman. It was sort of like which one is going to get financed first. And Anchorman, which is genius, he couldn't get that financed. I mean, you guys know how it works. I mean, it's the same in sports. I think I often think about sports because I'm a big sports fan. When I think about Hollywood or business or whatever, it's very similar. It's like you're not the man until you're the man, and then everybody goes, "Oh, I knew it." There's all this bandwagon, but you need one person to buy in and give you a shot.
Okay, so I want to bring in Fran here, Fran Zeuli. So you guys work together on Saint of Second Chances. Fran, you're an executive producer on this. So what is the story between you guys meeting up? How did you guys get together? Jon, was there was there a hard pitch to find this, to jump on board with this movie as well? Like, right. What's the connection between you guys and this movie?
Yeah, so Jon reached out to me about 5 years ago. I think it was 5 years ago, and said, I've been carrying around this Sports Illustrated story about Mike and Rebecca and the whole Vec family, and it's called The Sorcerer's Apprentice. And said, I've been carrying this around for 15 years.
Yeah.
And believed so much that the story was that powerful, reached out and said, what do you think? And let's start to have a conversation about it. And it kind of grew from there.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, so you guys remember Sports Illustrated used to be a thing, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
So,
yeah, man. I love it.
Yeah. We all had the covers on our walls, and and so there was this amazing article, as Fran's saying, written by this guy, Gary Smith.
Yeah.
And it had come out, God, I don't know how long. And I, just would clip things out, articles or little things that I was interested in. I'd stick it in a folder, and I would carry the folder with me everywhere. When I went to Warner Brothers, I made Sherlock Holmes, and I was the executive overseeing these movies, but heavily involved in Edge of Tomorrow and all these things. And Dark Knight Rises with Mr. Nolan, you don't really, he's not really looking to you for your point of view. But I would carry this folder with me, and I finally I'd left Warner Brothers. I started producing my producing career again, and I pulled out the article.
Yeah, and there'd been a number of people that reached out over time about saying this Vec story is amazing. It's got this history. It's got Mike's father, all these things. And it just resonated. Part of what I did is made sure, in a sense, that Jon had the heart and the sensibility and cared enough about the story. Immediately got that. I mean, in a matter of just minutes talking to him. And then we went through a couple series of meetings. Jon met Mike and Libby Vec, and immediately they fell in love together. Jon came out, and we spent a day with Mike and Libby and Rebecca at Rebecca's house in Charleston.
Yeah. And then I came out to see the Saints. That was a huge part of it too. Went to a couple of ball games, and it's an unbelievable. I mean, Fran, I care about Fran. He's an amazing guy, and he's introduced me to you guys, and he's been he's been a saint, and him and his relationship with Mike. Mike is you guys know Mike Vec. Mike Vec is the greatest human being maybe on the planet. What an incredible energy, laugh, smile, fun, just spirit, just a light. And I got a chance to meet him, and I had fallen in love with that story, and then I just fell further in love with it, and as I got to know everybody.
Yeah, Jon and I then met. We met in Jon's office in Hollywood, and we had a number of people sort of in our mind that we thought would help make this film. And we were thinking at the time, not a documentary, but it would be a narrative. and had a number of people associated with it. And Morgan Neville was one of them, who had done amazing documentaries in the past. John reached out to Morgan, and we got together, and then we find out that Morgan has been carrying that same mentality about a Vex story forever.
Wow.
So all that comes together in this crazy cool way.
It's kind of kismet, but I have to say, I mean, to everybody out there listening, you should definitely watch this documentary, Saint of Second Chances. It's a great one. A lot of it is about the zaniness and the craziness of the St. Paul Saints. It's all about Mike Veck and the Veck family, and it's about family and love and fatherhood and a little bit about baseball. It's pretty good.
It's so good. I think all of our listeners have watched it by now because we had Fran on, and I must have gotten a million emails from people saying they were crying at the moment as they were typing the email. So just great. So again, Fran Zeuli and Jon Berg in studio with us. We'll continue talking because we haven't delved into Wonder Woman or Aquaman or all those giant films and what it must be like to be a part of something like that. So stick around after this, Corey. We'll do that.
And John, do you want us to do this now or at the end of the show, beg to be in one of your movies?
Yeah.
Again, we don't need speaking roles. Look, somebody took a chance on you and Favreau and Farrell and Zoe.
Totally true.
Give us a chance.
And
I know
Zoe
we're
looks
not
like a
good looking
superhero.
exactly.
We just want to be extras, just in the background, just having a cup of coffee.
I think we may be able to make this work.
Yes.
We'll have to. We'll start. I'll have some scenes for you guys. Maybe you'll do some reads for
Yeah, that'd be
us.
great.
Oh,
All right.
crap. Sauce is not going to be able to read.
I'm here, what?
Man, more with John and Fran after this on The Fan.
And thanks to our friends at Wolf River. We didn't get to Fan 5, but we love you, Wolf
Yeah,
River.
go
Thank you.
solar with Wolf River Electric.
The Fan. Again, The Fan.
All right, so we got two big-time film guys in studio with us right now. Fran Zeuli was nice enough to come back, and this time introduce us to Jon Berg, another big-time movie executive producer, everything from Elf to Wonder Woman to on and on. And again, we have a new film coming out not long from now, Minecraft the movie in 2025, which seems like it's not a real year, but it'll be here before you know it.
John, I have a 9-year-old. She is all in on Minecraft.
Yeah.
She's
Great.
going to be there day one.
Great.
Which means I will be there day one as well.
Okay, fantastic. We'll have you both.
John,
You can have my money.
Let's do a screening here.
we've got, let's do
we
that.
could do
That
a
would be so
screening
much
here.
fun.
We could figure that out.
Power trip screening.
Okay.
Oh, man, that could be a new thing for us.
Yeah, Minneapolis screening of Minecraft. Why not?
Sure.
Yeah,
let's
let's figure
do it.
that out.
Okay, I'm going to start the next line of questions with a question about one of my favorite things in the world to do is read and listen to Stephen King books. And you're doing The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon.
Yes.
Is that one of those books you read and said, I must
Yeah.
make this a film? Isn't it great?
Oh, it's amazing.
What a
It's
great
incredible.
concept.
It's an incredible book. We have a great script, and we came very close. We had a director who was did, and just the timing didn't work. Last year also got wiped out with all these strikes. We had a terrible year for making movies. But yeah, I love that book. I'm a Red Sox fan, originally from Boston. Some Red Sox, Patriots, Celts. By the way, looks pretty good right now. Celts, T-Wolves, leading the league.
We'll take that.
Yeah. Big cat guy. I read that book, and it's an amazing. I was watching the Red Sox when Tom Gordon was pitching, and I fell in love with that book. It's a good one.
Let me ask the more about the role of a producer. Because there seems to be, when you see the credits, there's the executive producer, you get a whole list of producers, then you have associate producers, all this stuff. Is there do the producers have to put up money? Like who puts up the money for these movies? And like kind of part two, when you are a producer, wherever you are on the hierarchy, are you on set the whole time?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, yes and yes, sometimes and sometimes. So in the company that I now have, so when I worked for Warner Brothers, we put up the money. And, I would always joke, people were like, I'd say, you know why people rob banks, right? Because that's where the money is. So we sat on the money. So people would come to us and I would never have to leave my office. And it was great. I put 0 miles on my car. I just sat there and people would come in and have a meeting. Then as a producer, you're out there, you're hustling, you are trying to raise the money. Most producers are trying to raise the money. Certainly some producers that are named on a movie have given money, have put financing in, and executive producers. I wasn't that kind of producer. I wasn't putting up my own money. now in the company that I'm a partner in called Stampede Ventures, we are a mini studio. So we have money, and we will put the movie that I'm here to do research on, and then I'm here with the director to drive up north and cruise around. We're putting up some money into this movie, not all the money, but we're putting some money up, and it's going to star Emma Thompson, and we're going to make it in March.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Sweet.
And it's being made here.
It is not being made here.
Okay.
I would love to make it here. So the director, who's awesome, his name is Brian Kirk. He's directed Game of Thrones and Boardwalk Empire. He directed a movie called 21 Bridges with Chadwick Boseman. And he just did this big movie series with Eddie Redmayne called Day of the Jackal. So he's my director. He's Irish. Emma Thompson, obviously British. The movie is set in Minnesota. The two writers of the movie come from Coon Falls. I think I got that right. They
Coon Rapids, maybe?
Coon Rapids, sorry. Coon Rapids.
Yeah.
They went to the University of Minnesota. They met, actually, weirdly, even though they came from the same town. They only met when they went to L.A. And they wrote this amazing story called The Fisher Woman about, a woman in her, a 70-year-old woman who's going out ice fishing, and she gets in the middle of, accidentally, a kidnapping in progress. So it's a little bit of Simple Plan. It's got some elements of Fargo. I like to say it's got a little bit of Don't Breathe, if you remember that movie, because it's pretty tense. So, yeah.
It's a great script. It's a great script.
Yeah.
So if we go back to last segment, you said something like, Jim Carrey was the original vision for Elf, but then eventually that role gets cast as Will Ferrell, and the rest is history. But I think a lot of us rubes like to hear those stories and go like, man, I wonder what that would have been like, right?
Yeah.
And I know actors get asked this all the time, but what are the biggest roles you ever passed up on that you regret? I got to think, as a producer, you see scripts all the time, and you're like, how did I let that one?
Oh, that's a good question.
Slip through the cracks. Do you have a two or three off the top of your head that you're like, I can't believe I said no to that one?
I have to think about that. I mean, I'm sure there are. I have to say, I've been pretty lucky or had some good instincts. When I was at Universal, I was the executive responsible for bringing in The Bourne Identity, right? That was a pretty good one. So that's a whole story. But this guy, Doug Lyman, amazing director, a friend of mine, he had the rights to that book. Elf, I've had luck here and there, but is there one that's really gotten away? I'd have to think about that.
Like, you didn't pass on The Avengers. Right?
Shit, you got me. I did. I passed on. Avatar. It was Avatar. Yeah.
Was Damon always the guy to be?
Yeah. So that was the other thing. So with Doug,
he was perfect.
Yeah. So Doug, quick story about that. So he had a movie. So he made Swingers, and then he had a movie called Go, and Go hadn't come out yet. Go was sort of independently financed. It was being distributed by Sony. We were at Sundance. He was premiering the movie at Sundance. It was like a midnight screening. I knew him through a friend of mine, and we went to the screening. And then, there was an after party at his apartment, and he's cooking raviolis or whatever he's doing on the stove at 2 o'clock in the morning. And but that's what you're supposed to ask, right? Like, what do you want to do next? What are you passionate about? And he said, I have this book and I have the rights, and it was made into a crappy television movie, and he told me what it was, and he's like, and yeah, in that pitch, he's like, this is, because James Bond had, this is pre-Daniel Craig, had gotten a little
campy and cheesy, sour,
and I love Bond,
right?
Yeah, and he's like, this is not your grandfather's James Bond movie. This is going to be in your face and tough and blah blah blah. And he had a real attitude and point of view about how he wanted to shoot the action. He said, yeah, and Matt Damon should be Jason Bourne. And I was like, great, where do I get the book? He's like, well, he's like, you know what, I may have a copy. He went to his bag, and he gave me this just dirty, coffee stained, gave me this book, and I read it on the flight home, and yeah, there you go. So yeah, but I did not pass on The Avengers, but I'm sure something will pop into mind.
So I want to we have just met, obviously, and I sort of want to pump your tires a little bit here, that you seem like such a normal, sensible person for being involved in such big Hollywood. Like you are in Hollywood. We have so many ideas of what we think Hollywood is. There's all the stereotypes what it is, and I think I'm guessing a lot of it might be true. Just the way people act and whatever. You seem super grounded in all of that.
Yeah.
This might be kind of a weird question, but like, do we have it wrong? Are there more people like you than people realize? Does Hollywood get sort of a bad reputation? Like, what is the vibe of that business?
Yeah, well, thank you. That's kind words. I mean, yeah, there are a lot of people like me. I mean, there's a whole business behind the business. That's what people forget. Like, just, like anything else, I didn't know it when I went out there, but there's, people raising families and kids in school and, going on family vacations, doing everything that normal people do, and who work at the studios, who work behind the scenes, who work for the agents. I mean, of course, the people that get all the attention and the negative attention too are the people that are the screamers or the, angry people or whatever, people who misbehave. But, that's not how I was raised. It's not who I am. But also, if you want to have a long career in any business, you better treat people with respect and be kind to the people on your way up, because it's the same people you're going to see on your way down.
Yeah, that's good advice.
That is the voice of movie producer Jon Berg, a movie executive, a movie guy. Jon Berg, who's with our friend Fran Zeuli, also a movie executive as well, by the way. Congratulations, Fran. I want to jump to 3 movies in a row you did. Wonder Woman, Justice League, Aquaman. Obviously, giant superhero movies. Very successful giant superhero movies. How much more difficult or how much easier is it to make something that enormous?
Before you answer that, I want to say, great to meet you. I have to leave.
I forgot.
Kind of a weird TV star.
Kind of a weird exit.
How am I going to put you in a movie if you're leaving right now?
There goes your shot, Ben.
I know I'm missing my opportunity, but I have a work call I have to be on every day at 8:40. So
all right,
it's great to meet you.
Next time you're in the cities, you can be on his TV show.
Yeah,
have John on the TV show and talk.
We'll have you on Twin Cities Live.
Okay, great.
Twin Cities Live.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
3 to 4:30.
Thanks, guys.
All right, Ben.
See you in Detroit, Ben. Bye, buddy.
See you, dude.
There he goes.
All right, so producing superhero films versus another film. The difference.
Well, yeah, I mean, so you on those movies, you have all the resources in the world. So you really, they're tough. Look, they're tough movies because they have a lot of moving parts. They have a lot of visual effects. They have complicated action sequences, etc. But you also have tremendous amount of resources and the best in the world working on. You try to get the best in the world working on all of your movies, but you really get the cream of the crop on those. So yeah, those are fun. I mean, those are different. You also know that there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on them. There's a lot of pressure. So you do your best on all of them.
Well, how about specifically Wonder Woman? Because I don't think the projections before that movie came out, I think the expectations were pretty low for the public. And then it blew everybody away, right? Giant runaway success, put Gal Gadot big time on the map.
Yeah.
When did you think that one was going to work? What part of the process were you like, all right, we got something here? Or was it when the movie was actually released and it started working?
Well, no, I mean, I saw, it's a good one. I mean, I think you kind of incrementally along the way, you start to gain more and more confidence. I mean, I certainly had confidence in the movie when we were, going into production. But then you see how Patty Jenkins is directing the movie and what the movie really looks like and how good Gal Gadot and Chris Pine are together. And the humor's working there and it just really, the movie comes together. But then, of course, you've got the trenches and, there's scope, spectacle and scale to the movie. But then, you see the trailer of the movie and you're like, this is going to work.
How long does it take for a massive blockbuster super movie from start to finish? How long does that take?
From start to finish is it's 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oof.
Which is crazy because if you think about it, you go into your little laboratory with, hundreds of other people to go make this movie. You have no idea when you start moving, and you are pot committed, to say the least, when you're making this movie.
Now you're speaking my language.
Yeah. You
can't. You a poker guy, by the way?
I'm a poker guy, yeah.
Jesus. We're going to be best friends.
You're going to take a lot of Corey's money.
I'm going to have your kids at the Minecraft movie. We're going to be...
No, we're skipping that now.
Okay.
I want to talk
No, he doesn't care about that anymore.
No, I don't care about my kids. We
forget
talk
about that.
Cards. You said pot committed. I'm like, now this is my language.
Here we
Let's
go. Yeah, pot odds.
Continue.
Pot odds. Well, you just don't know. There's like no other business. I guess there's, product development, I guess, at big corporations where you're launching a product and you have no idea how the world's going to change, or are people going to be into it or less into it, or you know what I mean? It's like what the conditions are. So yeah, you just try to go out there and make the best movie possible. You kind of put your blinders on.
I think that's fascinating. So, you've talked about the movie. We've talked about the movies you produced and things you've been involved with. But I don't know a lot about your career out of producing when you were actually with the studios. Any great films that you feel didn't get the success they so richly deserved that you were involved in?
I mean, you mentioned one of them, Edge of Tomorrow, when it came out, wasn't a big commercial hit. I think for various reasons, but the movie has really, a lot of people saw it not in theaters, saw it afterwards online, streaming, etc. I'm really proud of that movie. That movie, again, with Doug Liman, my friend from Bourne Identity, and the incredible Tom Cruise. I mean, that one's a great one.
Well, did you see just this week? We just talked about it a couple days ago. Rolling Stone referenced, what we had it, I think it was 15th or something.
Oh, 15th? No way.
They had the 150 greatest science fiction films of all time, and Edge of Tomorrow was right in the top 15.
I think it was 15,
Yeah, so I mean, obviously the critics think it's that good as well.
Yeah, the movie really worked. I mean, it just didn't quite. That's a perfect example of, there's no blame. It's just it didn't hit. It just, people weren't that, maybe the materials didn't drive people to the theater enough or whatever it was. But yeah, that one really worked out. Yeah, I mean, I got to make, the way, I'll stop talking like an old man, but when I was at the movie studio from 2007 to 2017, that was like the heyday of the traditional movie system. And I'm so glad that I was at Warner Brothers at that time. So I got to make all different kinds of movies. Yes, there was Wonder Woman. Yes, there was Aquaman. But I got to make Argo, American Sniper.
Wow.
Great film.
So drama thrillers, comedies. I made, a couple of movies with Robert Downey. I made Due Date with Downey and Zach Galifianakis. So studios were releasing a more varied slate, and that doesn't really exist anymore.
So back to Edge of Tomorrow, which I haven't seen, which is kind of egregious because I like I like those kinds of movies.
Yeah. So good.
But I understand the concept, and Groundhog Day is one of my all-time favorite films, and it just made me think when you were talking about Edge of Tomorrow where you were proud of it and it just didn't hit.
Yeah.
Are elevator pitches true? Like, for a movie like that, you can sum up like it's Groundhog Day, but with a war.
Yeah.
Right? Is that how it's pitched to you, or is that really a thing, or is it really just meetings and it's an extended vision? How does that work?
No, I think elevator pitches are really important. I mean, for sure. I mean, in different capacities. I mean, sure, you want to be able to pitch something. I mean, Fran has heard me pitch movies ad nauseum, so I apologize, Fran. But you want to be able to pitch something succinctly and get somebody on the hook. You want to get, in a couple of sentences, you want to get somebody leaning forward and wanting to know what happens.
So is that how that movie was pitched?
No, that on Edge of Tomorrow, no, there was a script. We bought what's called a spec script. So for a lot of money, we got my partner in my current company, Greg Silverman, shout out. He got the script and he bought it over the holidays. And took it off the market, and then we had to figure out, how to make it. But the script was based on a novella called "All You Need Is Kill." That was the original title of the. Maybe we shouldn't have changed that title, but that wasn't my decision. But and we had a great script and worked on it a bunch, and then got Doug and got Tom, and away we went. Okay. And Emily Blunt.
So I'm looking at a list of movies made from Warner Brothers from the time you were there. You said 2007, right?
That's right.
The Dark Knight. Were you on the set, and what was Heath Ledger like?
I wish. No, I wasn't on for that one. I was. Okay. I got to work on two of Mr. Nolan's. I call him Mr. Nolan. Two of his movies. I got to work on The Dark Knight Rises and Interstellar, but I wasn't. The Dark Knight is the greatest superhero movie of all time, hands down.
Not even close. You were correct.
Not agree more. Yeah.
Interstellar's fantastic.
Gosh,
another massively underrated film.
Yeah. That one kind of found its audience. It wasn't one of his biggest openings, but it's a great movie.
Did Slumdog Millionaire come to you guys as a movie, or did you do that?
So that's a story of. I wasn't involved in that one, but that is a story of, sort of prophetically, I guess, of Warner Brothers making a mistake. So that was a Warner's movie. It was finished, and they let it go. That's and they turned it over to Fox Searchlight, and Fox Searchlight ended up releasing that movie.
How many times does that happen?
I think it happens all the time. I think there were the chairman before I got to this, well before I got to the studio, but the chairman of Warner Brothers were these two famous guys named Bob Daly and Terry Semmel. And they have a building, the sort of head executive building is named after them. And they were famous in the business guys who had decades were partners and ran Warner Bros. And one of them, I can't remember which one it was, said sort of famously, I think if I had said yes to all of the movies I said no to, and no to all of the movies I said yes to, I probably would have wound up in the same place.
Right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you just never know is the bottom line. You got to go with your gut. And certainly you're trying to see, market data, or has a movie worked like this before, but you're also trying to do something new and innovative. You're always trying to, bring, Jim Cameron does that technologically. Every movie he does something brand new that the audience has never seen before.
I'm sorry if I'm bringing up movies you had nothing to do with, but again, I'm just looking through the Warner Brothers list. You talked about how Elf was taking a chance on a lot of people. It's easy to look back now on The Hangover and say, wow, that was going to be a huge hit.
No.
But nobody knew any of those guys.
No, so that's a great example. So that's my producing partner, the guy I'm partnered with in Stampede Ventures, Greg Silverman. He was the executive on that. He was really pushing to make that. And, Todd Phillips was not white hot at that point by any stretch of the imagination. And they had, I think it was Owen Wilson and Vince Vaughn, and there was someone else in the movie, and they couldn't get the budget to a place where the studio was comfortable to make the movie. So they said, we're not making it at this budget level. And Todd believed so strongly in the movie and what he thought it could do. He's like, I'm going to cast 3 guys that nobody knows. And now, of course, everybody knows who they are. Yeah. And he gave up part of his directing fee to get the movie made. And, he made a ton of money doing it.
It's a top 5 funniest film of all time.
Hilarious.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
But it's all, I think you got to have, and by the way, part of the reason I think movies are, there's so much money that's been spent on streaming, movies, content. We've made a documentary. I'm glad that they paid for that. My company's making a big animated movie for Netflix. It's going to come out next year. I'm thrilled that there's money in the marketplace, but there's been so much money in the marketplace, and you haven't seen a corollary great movies. You know what I mean? Like, you haven't seen a ton more awesome movies. And I think it's because people they get a little comfortable. You got to, when you're an executive on making these movies, like my business partner, Greg Silverman, when he was advocating to the bosses, you can imagine what these 60-year-old guys thought of The Hangover. Okay. And he was like, they're like, do you bet your career on this? Because if this movie bombs, you're out of here. Ugh. And he said, yes. Wow. I do. And that you got to have that, because there's got to be some element of like, this could be a huge, when the guy said to me, this Elf movie is going to be a stinker, and it's going to ruin your career. I was like, well, at least I'm playing at the right table. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like, you know what I mean? Like the odds here, it's like, this is, winner take all.
Yeah. And the Hangover movie is one of those films that was such a word of mouth film. Yeah. Like, you saw it and you're immediately like, you had to tell everybody how funny it was, how original it was. It's a home run. It's kind of like the way, as you just described, Elf was.
Yeah, it's just, it's going for it, right? It's not playing it safe.
Yeah. Jon Berg and Fran Zeuli, again, we got a couple more minutes, but I got to go back to Inception for a moment. Were you on set at all during that for Inception?
No, I wasn't for Inception. Okay. I Interstellar was the one that I was on.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah,
but no, Inception, but it's unbelievable. So I can't tell you whether the top fell over or not.
Yeah, I wasn't going to ask you that. I was just wondering if you, because I didn't know if maybe you read the script beforehand or anything like that, but I wondered when you understood the film.
Oh, well, no. Yeah, so famously with Mr. Nolan, you go to his office and you sit in a room off of his office and you read the script. You're not allowed to take the script with you anywhere. Wow. So you got to read it on premises. So I was not involved in that one, but I do know that when people came back from reading it, I think the consensus was, I don't understand anything that's happening in that script. It's Chris Nolan. Let's make it.
See, that's what I figured, right?
Yeah.
That's how I felt about watching the movie Tenet.
Yes. Yeah.
I felt like if you had quizzed me right when the movie ended, I'm like, I got it. Totally get it. And then if you had asked me 30 minutes after I left the theater, I'd have been like, I don't understand what I just watched.
Yeah, my 19-year-old son, Miles, That's one of his favorite movies, and he teases me endlessly that I'm just not smart enough to understand it.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, that one's tough. That's how Sauce felt about Inception.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't
can't
like that
blame you,
movie.
man. That's a hard movie.
It's above my head. I want like action and boobs. That's what I want.
That's half.
There you go.
You got half?
There you go. There's some of that in there.
All right. Well, one last thing, and then again, thank you, Fran, for making this happen. Fran Zeuli and Jon Berg, I appreciate it. We could do this for 3 hours. But is Alan Ritchson as big as he looks like he is on screen? He's a monster.
He's a monster. So, yeah, just a quick plug on that. So I have a movie called Ordinary Angels with Alan Ritchson and Hilary Swank that's coming out February 23rd.
Nice.
That's a Lionsgate movie. It's a true story. It's a real... it's an emotional movie, and it's it's a tearjerker, but also leaves you uplifted in the end. And so, I highly recommend that people go see that. February 23rd comes out. Alan is gigantic. There's no question. He's a beast, and he actually lost some weight for our movie. He wasn't training as hard, but he got even bigger for Reacher too.
So like 6'4", 6'5"?
Oh, how tall? He's my size. He's like 6'2", 6'3". But
that's a huge bitch.
He's huge.
I just wanted to hit the button.
He is. Wow. Well, this has been so much fun, man. Thank you for taking the chance to come and hang out with us.
Man.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
And if you want to do a movie about the Power Trip Morning Show
or the Avengers 5, I'll play the Hulk. Look,
yeah.
45 minutes ago, all I wanted was to be an extra in one of your movies. Now I just want the show to end so we can talk cards. My movie career is secondary to poker strategy. Let's talk cards.
Well, maybe we'll make a poker movie.
Deal.
Oh my, oh my.
Why did they not make Rounders 2? Rounders 1 is one of the... It changed my life.
The Saint of
in
Second
the worst
Chances.
possible ways.
The Saint of Second Chances is such a fantastic film. Well done, you guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right. We're back tomorrow, 5:30 to 9. Initials tomorrow at 8:15 with what? Is it 56? I think it's $56,000 on the line with the jackpot. So check that out tomorrow, 5:30 to 9. Power Trip. See ya.